Japanese submarine slammed 2 torpedoes into our side, Chief. It was coming back from the island of Tinian Talati. Just delivered the bomb. The Hiroshima bomb. 1,100 men went into the water. Vessel went down in 12 minutes. Didn't see the first shark for about half an hour. Tiger, 13-footer. You know how you know that when you're in the water, Chief? You tell by looking from the dorsal to the tail. And what we didn't know was that our bomb mission had been so secret, no distress signal had been sent. They didn't even list us as overdue for a week. Very first light, Chief, the sharks come cruising. So we formed ourselves into tight groups. You know, it's kind of like old squares in a battle. And like you see on a calendar, like the Battle of Waterloo. And the idea was the shark comes to the nearest man, and that man, he starts pounding and hollering and screaming. And sometimes the shark would go away. Sometimes he wouldn't go away. Sometimes that shark, he looks right into you. Right into your eyes. You know the thing about a shark, he's got lifeless eyes. Black eyes, like a doll's eyes. When he comes at you, doesn't seem to be living. Until he bites you, that is. And those black eyes roll over white, and then you hear that terrible high-pitched screaming. And the ocean turns red. And in spite of all the pounding and hollering, they all come in and rip you to pieces. You know, by the end of that first dawn, lost 100 men. I don't know how many sharks, maybe 1,000. I don't know how many men, they averaged 6 an hour. On Thursday morning, Chief, I bumped into a friend of mine, Herbie Robinson from Cleveland, baseball player, bosun's mate. I thought he was asleep. Reached over to wake him up. Bobbed up and down in the water just like a kind of top. Upended. Well, he'd been bitten in half below the waist. Noon, the 5th day, Mr. Hooper, a Lockheed Ventura saw us. He swung in low and he saw us. He's a young pilot, a lot younger than Mr. Hooper anyway. He saw us and come in low. And 3 hours later a big fat PBY come down and starts to pick us up. You know, that was the time when I was most frightened. Waiting for my turn. I'll never put on a life jacket again. So, 1,100 men went into the water. 316 men come out. Sharks took the rest. June 29th, 1945. Anyway, we delivered the bomb. They say an Englishman's home is his castle. Well, once upon a time I was the king of this old place. You see, all this was once mine. The manor house, the grounds, the gardens, the stables, even the old mulberry tree out front. After many years in India, I'd returned to England and made Charlton House my home. I had wealth beyond my wildest dreams, and everything my heart had ever desired. Everything, that is, except an heir, a son or daughter to share in my luxury, and who would, on the day of my death, inherit the fortune I had been so blessed with in life. Then, in the winter of 1700, my good wife of 11 years, Lady Grace, fell ill and died not long after. Well, my friends, her death hit me like a bolt of lightning, so it did. I realised then that without my dear Gracie, I had nothing. I was just another sad old man alone in an empty house. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. Months rolled into years. You know, sometimes, sitting there by myself at night when the house was at its most peaceful, I often swore I could hear the sound of children's laughter echoing down the hallways and corridors. But the mind plays tricks. And more often than not, it was just the sound of the wind, whistling down the chimneys and around the old fireplaces. Even the wind had begun to mock me in my predicament. That's when I met Mary. Mary Aston, by God, ladies and gentlemen, she was an absolute cracker. Well, our romance was the very definition of whirlwind. Our swift engagement, almost a foregone conclusion, if you will. Soon, news of our impending nuptials had spread like wildfire throughout the village. Gossip and tittle-tattle were rife. I was the 85-year-old multi-millionaire with a glint in his eye and extremely high blood pressure, and she was the comely 17-year-old whose beauty had aroused passion in many a young Charlton buck. What could possibly go wrong? Stick around and you'll find out. Oh, do excuse me. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Langhorne. Sir William Langhorne. You know, they also say that a fool and his money are easily parted. Well, that's as maybe. But a fool in love? Well, he worries not if his purse is empty, or if his belly is empty, or indeed if his house is empty for that matter. Why? Because his heart is always full.